watching here in person and online. Bon après-midi tout le monde et merci à vous toutes et à vous tous d'être ici avec nous en personne ou en ligne. So it's an honor for me to release our annual report today. This is our first annual report since the historic expansion of my office's mandate. For the first time, we are reporting not just on the hundreds of provincial government bodies that we oversee, but on the 444 municipalities, 82 school boards and school authorities, and the 21 universities that are now within our jurisdiction. And it's also my first annual report as Ontario's Ombudsman, a post that I assumed on April 1st of this year. Now, because we've accomplished so much since then, I felt it was important that this report reflect our latest work, as well as that of the past fiscal year, which ended March 31st. My priority as Ombudsman has been to build on this office's strong reputation as an agent of positive change by establishing appropriate and productive relationships with all of our stakeholders. Now, this has been particularly important as we have expanded our jurisdiction into areas where people are not necessarily familiar with who we are or what we do. Ma priorité à titre d'Ombudsman est de bâtir sur la solide réputation de ce bureau en tant qu'agent de changement positif, en nouant des relations pertinentes et productives avec tous nos intervenants. Ceci s'est avéré particulièrement important car nous avons élargi notre champ de surveillance à des secteurs où les gens ne savent pas forcément qui nous sommes et ce que nous faisons. So for that reason, today's report is more than just a summary of the 22,118 cases that we received up to March 31st and the 10,830 that we've received since then. It also explains the basics of what an ombudsman is, how we work, and how we can help. It reviews the most common topics of concern to Ontarians and how we address them, whether through quick, behind-the-scenes resolution, proactive work with the relevant bodies, or formal investigation. Now, my hope is that it provides an answer for anyone who has asked the question, what can the Ombudsman do for me? What we can do, and what we are doing every day, is promoting fairness in the public sector and improving governance. For example, we helped an inmate who had been in segregation for 9 months receive psychiatric help and get moved to the general population. We prompted the Family Responsibility Office to take action against a man who owed more than $300,000 in support. We helped a woman get almost $5,000 in disability support that she was entitled to from ODSP. And we helped a senior whose medical report had been misplaced by the Ministry of Transportation get his license reinstated in 1 day. We persuaded school boards to implement processes for complaints about trustees. So this is the kind of complaint resolution work that we do day in and day out in so many areas. But we also add value for all stakeholders, not just complainants. And that includes providing feedback to public sector bodies on systemic issues through our investigations and recommendations for corrective action. And we have done that with our 2 recent systemic reports on police de-escalation training and on services for adults with developmental disabilities. In both cases, after some initial resistance, we were able to persuade the relevant ministries to accept all of our 82 recommendations, which I am convinced will save lives. We've also done it in our proactive meetings with public sector leaders, including the head of the Ontario Public Service, where we have alerted them to brewing problems. And we've done it in our outreach work with new stakeholders. We've done it in our submissions recommending legislative change in such important areas as police oversight and segregation in Ontario jails. Donc, je suis fier de diriger un bureau réputé pour la valeur de son travail au service de millions d'Ontariennes et Ontariens. Et je suis bien déterminé à maximiser son efficacité alors que nous continuons d'élargir nos horizons. I am proud to lead an office that is known for the value it provides to millions of Ontarians, and I am committed to making it more effective than ever as we continue to expand our new horizons. Now, I'm sure many of you have questions about specific issues, so what would you like to know? Qu'aimeriez-vous savoir?
Could I ask about the number one complaint agency, again, is the Family Responsibility Office. It seems this going back a decade. They seem never to be able to get on top of this issue. You had a man call you from jail when he didn't even know he owed the money. They've been sending it to the wrong address. How did you get this guy out of jail, and how long did that take?
Well, what we did was what we do in so many cases in so many areas is work with the department and bring to their attention rather, situations that they're not always aware of. You're right that has been an area of great difficulty over the years, one of the highest numbers of complaints. But I have to say that in the last year we've been very encouraged by the changes. We actually see positive changes at the Family Responsibility Office. There's some new leadership there. The Deputy Minister, Assistant Deputy Minister, we've been working with them. And we're witnessing the implementation of significant changes there now. They have a service charter, they have service standards, and they have a new complaint process. So we're going to give that some time to take hold and see where it goes, but we'll continue to monitor that situation.
How long did it take, though, to get that guy out of jail that called, and you called your office, he's in jail? And
yeah, I'm not sure about the specific time on that. Well, we can get that information for you if you like.
Ombudsman, you say that you spoke to the head of public service, Steve Orsini, because of brewing problems. Can you give an example of a problem that you had to go that high up?
Well, it wasn't one specific problem. This is a regular consultation that goes on, and my predecessor have done it as well. I think it's important for us to give feedback to the head of the public service, to let them know what we're seeing, what we're hearing. This is part of the value we add for government. We're kind of that canary in a coal mine. We can alert, whether it's various departments or the head of the public service, to issues that we're seeing through the course of, and we won't wait. I think we'll meet probably a couple of times a year and give them a heads up to address issues, and they can be proactive in that way. And I think that's the benefit of the people of Ontario. Rather than waiting for a problem to fester and then having to do an investigation and make recommendations, if we can nip these things in the bud by being proactive, I think that's a value that we add.
Dans le transport scolaire, où vous en êtes rendu dans votre enquête? Qu'est-ce qui a été fait? Qu'est-ce qui reste à faire? Et la menace de grève ce soir, si ça vous préoccupe.
Mais comme vous savez, il y a plusieurs familles qui se sont retrouvées en difficulté au début de l'année scolaire. Cette année, il y avait un manque de chauffeurs d'autobus scolaires. Nous avons entamé une enquête systémique sur l'enjeu et je peux vous dire que nous sommes au stade présentement d'étudier la documentation. Je pense qu'on vient de recevoir la semaine dernière 25 000 documents. Donc, c'est là que nous sommes rendus. C'est l'analyse des documents et la preuve.
Des conseils scolaires?
Exact, oui.
Et le risque de grève dans le transport scolaire ce soir?
Ben, nous ne gérons pas dans les conflits de travail.
Do you have an update on the school bus crisis where there's not enough school buses, not enough kids?
Sure. Well, as I just said in French, we've launched a systemic investigation into that matter, and right now we're in the process of studying the documentation. We've received some 25,000 documents in the last week or so, so we're at the analysis stage right now, and we'll be conducting interviews after that.
If there's a school strike, that will only amplify the stress that parents are going through in trying to get their children to school.
It could well add to the problems, absolutely.
Should they be an essential service?
Well, that's up to the government to decide.
Mr. Dubé, I know you spent a lot of time in provincial prisons. I guess, are you satisfied with some of the recent changes that the government's made to segregation policy?
Well, I think that's the work that's ongoing. Are all the problems solved in provincial prisons? No, there's a lot of work to be done, and we are waiting to see what comes of a new review launched by the ministry. What I can tell you is that, as you may know, we produced a submission to the ministry on the issue of segregation, and we've called for an outright ban on indeterminate segregation and reviews. So we're anxious to see if that's followed up on, and we'll continue to monitor the issues that arise out of prisons. And I think that it's an issue that is very, very important, and I've been talking to my staff just recently about organizing a tour of prisons this winter.
Have you been to visit Adam Cafe in Monterey?
I have not. Some members of my office have been there.
I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that visit?
Well, all I can say is, when we deal with complainants or we deal with people, we deal with it on a confidential basis. What I can tell you is that two people from my office went there last week, and we received full cooperation from the prison, and it's part of a bigger picture that we're looking into right now.
Have you seen any other inmates kept in segregation cells where the lights were on 24 hours?
Well, the lights are on 24 hours, I'm not aware of, but we deal with prisons extensively during the course of the year. We receive over 4,000 complaints a year from inmates in Ontario prisons. And so, again, that's an area where we add value, and we've helped a lot of people. I just gave an example of one such instance. So, we're there to assist in any way we can for individual inmates who have issues. And we encourage them to bring those issues to us.
I know you asked or have suggested that your office oversees all of the police civilian oversight bodies.
Yep.
Will you be requiring more resources if that should happen?
No, I don't think so. I think we're well equipped to deal with that. We already have oversight of the Special Investigations Unit, and I think it just makes sense for us to have oversight over the other two bodies. I think that, and we'll see what Justice Tulloch concludes in his review, but we were quite happy to be able to make submissions to that review. One of the things that we say and suggest is that Ontarians don't really know a lot about how to complain about the police. They don't necessarily know where to go. And, some of the acronyms are quite confusing. People know where we are. We're a trusted body, and I think we've established our value over the years. And so I think it would just make sense for us to have, if we have oversight over SIU, it makes sense for us to have oversight over those other bodies so people know where to go to a trusted voice. I think there's a real lack of confidence right now in police oversight, and it needs some tending to instill confidence by enhancing the transparency and accountability of these bodies.
And there's, just continuing on that, the blue sky, how important is transparency, and whether it be the teachers, College of Teachers, Ontario College of Physicians, SIU, how important is that to democracy in Ontario?
Well, I think it's crucial. I think that, human nature is such that if people think an organization is not going to treat it fairly, they're not going to fully support that organization. They're not going to buy into it. They're not going to accept the results of decisions made by that organization. And I think that applies to government writ large. So I think that anything a public sector body can do to enhance transparency really increases the trust and the faith that people have in it, and then they will fully engage with that public sector body. And I think that enhances democracy.
Mr. Dubé, can you give us an update on where you stand now on the decision of whether to investigate the WSIB or not?
Well, we've been having conversations, but I think what's important in that area is that the president, and I've met with the president of WSIB, and I've talked to the heads of the unions as well, and they're engaged in dialogue right now, and they're telling me that that's productive dialogue. So I don't want to interfere with that. I think that we should let that unfold and see what happens there. But I'm encouraged by the kind of conversations that are going on between the parties.
I mean, just to follow up on that, so I guess those conversations, you're satisfied. I know you've heard a lot of complaints from injured workers, but I guess.
Well, look, I think a solution to an issue like that, the best possible solution is going to come from the parties. And so if the parties can reach an agreement that is acceptable to them, that's going to be the best solution, rather than having suggestions or recommendations coming from a third party. So we're going to let that play out and see what transpires. But I'm hopeful that these conversations are going to lead to some meaningful change.
It sounds like, so just to clarify, it sounds like you're maybe leaning away from pursuing an investigation? Or
well, you know what? We're an office of last resort. So we always are the last resort. And so if the parties to a dispute or to a problem are engaged in constructive conversation, we're hopeful that they will come up with solutions that are agreeable to them, and that last resort won't be needed. If it is, we'll be there.
Just to go back to Adam Cape one more time, Community Services or Community Correctional Services Minister David Rossetti said that he's not aware of anyone else that is in prison with 24-hour lighting. And it just kind of seems like maybe it's odd that there's only one outlier. Have you ever received complaints about that from anyone else?
About the 24-hour lighting, as I said earlier, I'm not aware of any other situations like that, but that's something that we're both most interested in hearing from inmates if they have any complaints along those lines. And as I say, we get over 4,000 complaints a year from inmates in Ontario jails. So I think we're well positioned to notice trends, and this is an issue that we're going to keep our eyes on going forward. All right. Well, no other questions. I want to thank you, everybody, for your attention. Thank you very much.